History had always pulled at me more than any other subject, and by the time I left secondary school I knew exactly which degree I wanted. 4 years later I graduated and joined a field survey team, and nothing prepares you for standing at the literal seam between the present and the deep past. We worked from old gazetteers and local rumor, chasing down coordinates that historians thought might hide something. Most weeks gave us nothing but broken kilnware and rusted nails. We dreamed of something like the Antikythera mechanism or the Nag Hammadi texts, but we'd happily settle for a coin hoard. What follows is the account of the one find that actually changed everything I believed, and I think it might do the same to you. We were surveying a collapsed watchtower near the old garrison line outside Dunhuang, where a shepherd had reported a cave mouth exposed after a rockslide. Inside we found the usual frontier debris: broken lacquerware, a few corroded arrowheads, the remains of a barracks that looked like it had burned in some forgotten skirmish. But tucked into a sealed alcove, wrapped in oiled silk that had somehow kept the desert damp out for 2,000 years, was a scroll. Brittle at the edges, but legible. Written in a clean military hand, mixing classical Chinese with a few characters none of us could place, as if the author had run out of words his own language could supply. We sent it to a specialist in early Han manuscripts for proper conservation and translation, and then we waited. Months turned into nearly 2 years, and the thrill I'd felt cracking that rock face quietly dissolved into the background hum of ordinary life, until I got an invitation to a closed seminar where the lead researcher would finally present her findings. Only the dig team and a handful of others were in the room. She handed out printed translations and gave us the short version before we'd even opened the pages. The scroll was the testimony of a frontier officer, written sometime during the chaos of a peasant uprising, describing in plain, almost clinical detail his encounter with a man the rebels called their sage, and what that sage actually was. I read it standing in the parking lot before I'd even reached my car. I read it again that night, and a third time before dawn, because I needed to convince myself I'd misunderstood it the first time. I hadn't. What's transcribed below is unedited. I wish I could tell you it reads like fiction. My name was Liu Heng, second son of a minor frontier clan, posted as a junior officer to the garrison line west of the Yellow River in the year the uprising spread out of the eastern provinces. We had been ordered to hold the roads and watch for agitators slipping west with the rebel bands, men wrapped in yellow cloth who claimed a new age was coming. Mostly they were starving farmers led by men no different from us. But one report from a village 3 days south described their leader not as a man, but as something else, and I rode out myself to see it, certain the messenger was simply afraid of his own shadow. I found the gathering at dusk, hundreds of villagers kneeling in a flooded paddy field, faces turned toward a raised platform of cut bamboo. On it stood the figure they called teacher. I want to be precise about what I saw, because I have spent the years since trying to convince myself I imagined it. Its limbs were too long for its frame, jointed wrong at the elbow, and its skin held no color at all, like wet ash. Where a face should be there was only a smooth plane, broken by a single vertical seam that opened and closed when it spoke, though no sound came from it that any ordinary ear should hear, and yet every person in that field understood it perfectly. I turned to my sergeant and asked what he saw. He said, with real reverence, that he saw a humble old farmer with kind eyes and a long white beard. I have never since trusted my own sergeant's eyes, or my own. We took the teacher under guard on orders from the regional commander, and I was assigned to oversee its execution by fire, the standard punishment for sedition. Throughout the binding and the burning, that featureless face never turned from mine. The crowd wept and called it murder. I watched the body blacken and collapse into the pyre, and I watched, at the very same moment, the teacher itself standing untouched in the smoke beside its own corpse, watching me watch it. 3 nights later I drew the night watch over the sealed grave mound where the followers had laid the remains, fearing they'd steal the bones and claim resurrection. Near midnight the sky above the mound turned the color of old rust, and every sound in the world simply stopped. When I turned, it was standing behind me, the earth of the mound undisturbed. It told me, in that same soundless voice, that this was only the beginning of something it called the gathering, and that I would live to see it finished. Then there were dozens of them, identical, moving as one body through the dark, and they were gone. The cult of the teacher did not die with him. It spread along the trade roads faster than any army, carried by people who had nothing left to lose, preaching a brotherhood that frightened me more than any blade ever had. I am old now by any measure but my own. My face has not changed in 70 years, and I no longer believe that His mercy. I think I am being kept, the way a witness is kept for a trial not yet scheduled. If you have found this scroll, you already know more than is safe to know. Find me before they finish gathering.